Hello, ZBrush friends. I see a couple of people chiming in here in the chat. Everybody's excited. Welcome to another edition of ZBrush Masters. We thank all of you guys for tuning in and being ready for this stream. My name is Solomon Blair, and on behalf of Pixologic, it is our great pleasure and honor to be hosting ZBrush Master Vichar B N. I'd like to take this opportunity before we begin to share, honestly, one of the most spectacular digital portfolios we've ever seen. And you're going to get to know Vichar here in a second. You'll see here on my screen, we should have a just a digital portfolio of Vichar's ZBrush Central account. I want to make sure everybody has access to this. I'm actually going to go through and paste this to you guys in the chat. Give him a follow if you aren't already following, and you'll see just the incredible breadth of his work here. And he's going to go through today and demonstrate a lot of this stuff firsthand. Now, before we actually get started, I'm going to pass this off to Vichar here in a few. To explain kind of what the plan of action here is for this stream, we just, due to bandwidth issues, it would be hard for us to deliver a perfectly fluid stream. So what Vichar has done for you guys is he's actually pre-recorded a presentation for you. So Vichar is actually here. Vichar, you want to give a shout out to everyone here in the stream?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in.
Yeah, so Vichar's here. We're going to be actually communicating. This is going to be a little different than what we've done in the past because we're going to be presenting this to you through the stream. If you guys have any questions or things that you're throwing out in the chat, Vichar and myself are going to be monitoring. So we may stop the video at times. I'll give Vichar some time to maybe discuss some of these points if you want to go through those, or Vichar, if you feel that those things may be covered a little bit later in the presentation, we can sort of figure that out as we go. But Vichar is here, and you guys will be able to communicate with him directly. So hopefully you guys all love this presentation. I've seen it myself, and it's incredible. So Vichar, do you have anything to say before we get started?
Nothing. I'm excited, and same time I'm nervous too. And thanks everyone for tuning in, and thanks for the introduction, Solomon.
Of course. It's
Thank you very much.
My pleasure, my friends. All right. Well, let's get started. So we're going to go ahead and we'll pull up his presentation here.
Hello everyone, thanks for streaming in. I would like to take this opportunity to thank...
Just one second. Make sure I get this thing going. I swear this is working just fine a few seconds ago. There we go.
Hello everyone, thanks for streaming in. I would like to take this opportunity to thank Pixologic for giving me this wonderful opportunity. And I'm really excited and same time I'm nervous too. Let me introduce myself. My name is Vichar B N and I live in Bangalore, India. Having realized my interest in art in early years, I did my master's in sculpting from Chamarajendra Academy of Visual Arts and started my career as a traditional sculptor. During this time, I had the privilege to work as a personal sculptor for King of Mysore. This was my first workplace as well as I started my career as a sculptor from here. And this is late Shrikant Dattavade. I worked with him for several years and created a lot of sculptures for him. And one of my favorite is this sculpt. It's Greyhound. It's a life-size sculpt and it's done in a plaster of Paris. So like while working, I wanted to take my sculpting skills to very next level, and the craving to learn new things sparked in me the fascination towards CG. The idea of bringing your sculpt to life using technology was very alluring, almost like a playing god. There's a saying in Sanskrit, Aham Brahmasmi. According to me, every artist are demigods, where we create our character and give life to it. That was really fascinating me to come for to move to digital industry or explore the CG industry. I joined the animation industry over 15 years ago and currently working as department director for a gaming division at Technicolor India Private Limited. So I've been working for Technicolor from past 15 years. Over the years, I have pursued my career in art in various genre and roles. I have worked as assistant art director for live teleseries, illustrator for magazine, interior and exterior designer, and I've also worked for archaeology and forensic, and have done several freelance work too. Uh, Thanks for to the different roles that came my way during all this years. I got to work on a wide range of projects in terms of styles and media. That really helped me to develop my personal skills and ability to tell story using different media. And I would like to share, a couple of my digital works, what I've done till now in my spare time. I believe in a concept called art for stomach sake, art for soul sake. This all video what I've put across now is for my soul sake. And I would like to show a couple of my storytelling, how I've used the subject or the idea behind it. Then I would like to share about dynamic figurative composition.
Just one moment here. I'm going to pause here so we can take a moment to discuss with Vichar. Vichar, I don't know if you're seeing the comments. There's a couple of people that did have questions about your physical sculpture background. Could you take a moment to talk about that a little bit more?
Yes, I did my master's in Chamarajendra Academy of Visual Arts in Mysore. So I took up realistic sculpting or life study, and I used to tell a lot of story those days. Also, I was very much inspired from Indian architecture, and I used to tell story using Indian architecture paneling style. I used to work a lot on that basis.
Yes, that's fantastic, and a lot of people are curious about that part of your background. We can go ahead and go back to the. I may stop periodically throughout the stream if there's any quick questions, so you guys can get a feel for Vichar, and he's here present. Let's go back.
So this is called Hunting Dragon. The idea came when I was watching a video, and a very crucial moment, and you find an ad, and you will be wondering what will happen next, or you will be thinking. It makes the spectator to think about it. That was really sparked in me. Why don't I capture this in my sculpture? How do I capture it? So this was the whole idea behind it while creating this sculpt. And I tried to use a spiral composition so that there will be a tension in it, and it leaves the spectator to think what will happen next, whether the deer escaped or it's been eaten. So that was the whole idea when I did this sculpt. And my next sculpt is like Beauty and the Beast. So I wanted to change the stereoscopic view of people. People, when I show this artwork, when I ask which is the beauty and which is the beast, everyone say the beauty is the girl and beast is the crocodile. So I wanted to change that stereoscopic view of people. Like according to me, the beauty is the crocodile, beast is the us, the human, because we butcher them for our fashion and our daily uses. So I wanted to change, give a message to the society that in a different way through my sculpture. So I always use a subject or story where I can educate people, or through my sculpture, or capture a frozen moment. And next sculpt is called karma. I wanted to capture the saying. I wanted to convert that into a sculpture. Like karma means like what goes around comes around. So wanted to wanted to capture this in a sculpture. Like how do I get this? Like then it sparked me like boomerang. When you throw it, comes back. It's a similar thing, right? When you do good, you get back good. So always do good to others, so you get back good to you. So wanted to take this subject and build a sculpture, because no one has tried doing sculpture on this subject. So wanted to touch try my way of telling story. So I was inspired from great masters like Greco-Roman sculptures, and I took inspiration from that, and created my sculpture. And the next sculpt is called Obstacle to Success. This is sports related to life. This is a sports in India which we usually play, called Kabaddi. So in the rules of the game is you need to stop your opponent to cross the victory line. So when you see in real life, as we should allow someone to reach to their goal rather than stopping them. I like to tell sometimes in a story in a very abstract manner. Like I'm very much big fan of Giacometti or Henry Moore. So play with abstract way. So as an artist, we all we should appreciate each other rather than pulling somebody else, like by saying, oh, I didn't stopping their career growth. So wanted to tell a bigger message to the society. So we should be supportive to someone to reach. We should be helpful to make someone to grow in or reach to their goal. So that was the idea when I did this. And this is called Vival, a Lady with the Lamp. I was very much inspired from I would like to share my inspiration, where I got the inspiration for this. Put a small collage. So I was inspired from a painting, very famous painting in India, and the Vival sculpture, the marble sculptures. So blend of both, and I wanted to capture the hide and seek, and the play of light in this. So it's been I've been watching this painting from my childhood, so wanted to use these elements in my sculpture. Usually my the ideas or reference will be what I've seen, what I've experienced. I try to add in my sculpture and tell my own way of story using technology. So many of my sculpts are based in this line. I try to tell stories. I try to capture, frozen movement every time. So I would like to, show you one more sculpt of mine. Like, it's a haircut. Like haircut on a Sunday. If you have kids, if you'd have taken them for a haircut, the first time experience will be uh, very annoying, and they will be very cranky. So I wanted to capture. I like Norman Rockwell, where he tells a story in an image. In one image, it tells a lot of story. I'm inspired from movie posters, because in a one frame it tells a lot of story. Like that, I wanted to implement in my sculpture. Like in one sculpture, you should be able to tell the story and make the spectator to think about it. When he looks at it, he should think about, okay, what, or you should be able to relate to themselves. So always choose a subject where is universal, but still I have my experience on that. So I would show a couple of my sculptures and talk about in depth about spiral composition. Spiral composition, a very interesting subject, and I use a lot in my sculpture. Spiral, nothing but upward, composition spirals upward in a twisting figure with no frontal view. This is one of the unique attributes of of spiral composition. It offers multiple viewpoint and impact changes with the view position of the spectator. So I have put across a collage of great artists, great masters work, which really inspired me. When I was sculpting. So if you see it, spiral composition gives a multiple viewpoint rather than one frontal view. So whenever you go around the sculpture, it keeps you revolving, and it gives you a different views. So it goes like a spiral, the eyes goes spiraling around, and it keeps you rotating around the sculpture itself, and it creates a tension, it creates interest in all directions. So I wanted to implement all these things in my sculpture. This is also one more image from online I have put together. So if you see a multiple angle, it tells a multiple view, and it creates very interesting rather than one straight image. So I really like to implement all these elements in my sculpt, because we remember all this sculpt because the way they have told the story. Even though I'm not understand the subject, but I can relate to something, and I can create my own story. That is the strength of this great master sculpts. So according to me, like both are wonderful sculptures, and this both are done in a different time frame. I'm not talking about the sculpt here. I want to bring to you guys notice, like having a straight standing sculpt doesn't give that feel, or that doesn't look more realistic or live. If you see the right side of the image, which has a little twist, little turn, it makes more lifelike, more reality, more realism into it. Even though it's a subtle move, it makes a huge difference. If you compare with each other, like it looks more like as if the person is more live. Something action is happening, some storytelling is happening there with a subtle movement. And like to have this small gestures, weight change, or gestures. So I play with this. I've been inspired from the great masters, and I use all these elements in my sculptures. So I found this online very interesting. I don't know the author who had created this. It was there in my DOM from quite a long time. I thought I will share with you guys. And I like a single twist, or if you see the Michelangelo David, it's a single twist with the lower torso is twisted, upper torso is looking into a different direction. So that really makes the sculpture more interesting, and the play of light will be very nice, and the double twist. So I'll be showing a couple of my sculptures using this example in my sculpts. Sorry. Okay. So I will show you first with a single spiral composition. So this was done for beta test for ZBrush. The whole idea here was once again same thing. I wanted to capture the frozen movement, and same time I wanted to leave the spectator to think whether the rabbit got survived, the hay got survived, or it's been eaten by the dog. So if you see here, it's a spiral composition. It gives multiple view for the viewer. I always even though it is digital sculpt, I always imagine as a traditional sculpt, because since I come from a traditional background, I always imagine if it has been installed in a place, how I can make it more interesting, where everyone can view from different views. So this is a single spiral composition. If you see, the eye rotates in a spiraling composition. It loops back. So when you are rotating and seeing, it loops back to the circle of the sculpture. You cannot take away the eye. It once again loops back. So this technique I've learned from the great masters, how they use in their sculpting, and it creates a lot of interest. And at the same time, you need to have you have to push your skill of anatomy, and understanding of form, shape, negative space and positive space, and gesture. What pose will look good, and what gesture will look good, and which tells the story. So you will have to tackle around multiple subject at a time, and you have to push your skill level. And I like to every time explore a new way of telling story, and improve my skills. This is all done in my free time. So I try to improvise my skills. Like I believe in a concept called always be a flowing water rather than a stagnant water. So I have to keep on learning. Like if you like a sculptor, you have to take more chiseling to become a good statue. So like that, you have to push your skills. You have to push your envelope to become a good sculptor. I'm still in the process. I'm still learning. I think I've learned a little bit portion of it, not much. There's a lot to learn, and a lot to sculpt. Yeah. So I would like to show. This is sorry, I got deviated away, and this is a single spiral composition. I like to show you a couple more example. And as a sculptor, I like to capture 5 elements of the nature, like water, air, wind. It's very tough as a sculptor, traditional sculptor, to capture all those things. And ZBrush really helped me to achieve those things. I usually call this as a clay which never dries. So whoever have come from traditional background, they understand how painful is to maintain a clay. It's like taking care of a small baby. It is something like that. So you have to be very careful. You have to keep the wet cloth, and you have to maintain the cloth, maintain the clay. You shouldn't dry. So according to me, ZBrush gave me a really freedom to push all this limitation. There's no limitation for me. It's only my idea and my thought process, and ZBrush supports for me. Okay, so next is one more sculpt of mine called Balance of Life. Just a second, it's opening. Okay. So in this, it's wanted to give a message. Life is not easy. Life is like a unicycle, and it's not easy to balance. So it takes a lot of effort to balance. Life is something similar to that. So I wanted to capture that in my sculpture, and same time I wanted to explore much on anatomy and body type, the gesture, pose, and this is also spiral composition. So I really it really helps to define forms, and the play of light will be really good. And as I mentioned earlier, it gives multiple view for the viewer. So whenever I sculpt, I'll try to exaggerate the anatomy a little bit, not to stick with too realistic. I have my own stylization. I do a little stylization. So every time I explore every work of mine, I try to bring something new or learn something new, and improve my storytelling. So this is also a spiral composition. Just wanted to show, if it has been a real sculpture and it has been installed, if you would have gone around the sculpt, you would have got multiple viewpoint to see, and uh, it would have kept interesting. And it's a spiral composition. When your eye goes around, it loops back to the sculpture once again. So that's the whole idea. As I showed you previously, the Great Masters images, I've been studying them from quite a long time, and trying to get that recipe what they have used. And one more thing, I would like to say is, like, every time I ask this question, why do we take selfie front view rather, we won't take from the front view, rather we take it in 3/4 view, because the play of light, and it reveals the form nicely. If it is a photo with a front face, that doesn't look nice. So the same principle I have been applied here, because when you see in a 3/4, the play of light, the form underneath form will reveal itself, and it gives a tonal value. The play of light will be very nice. It catches a nice shades and gradient. So I play with all this elements. Since I come from a traditional background, for us is more of getting those tonal values. So I am trying to implement the same thing in my digital sculpture also. Whenever I start my sculpt, I spend a lot of time thinking about the subject. How can I make it more interesting, where everyone, when I say the caption, everyone should able to relate. or get connected with the subject. So always spend a lot of time thinking on this. And yeah, this is one more sculpt called Smoking Beauty. Just a second. So for this, I was inspired from. I'll show you the inspiration. Inspired from Harappa Mohenjo-daro sculpture and Degas sculpture, Dancing Girl. Like the art historian says, for this Harappan sculpture, after a dance, she's relaxing and standing, and that really fascinated me, and I wanted to implement this in my sculpture. So a pole dancer, after her dance, she's taking a break, and she's lost in her own thoughts and enjoying her smoke. So this was the inspiration, and I used the ZBrush panel looping for getting this netted cloth. I was playing with the technique also same time. I'm trying to master the technique, and as well as trying to tell the story. That was the inspiration for me from when I started. And this is also single spiral composition, and it's a little twist, not total twist. It's subtle twist. Initial when I started, I was playing with very subtle twist, like upper body twist, and lower to be a little straight. So this was the exploration stage when I started, and yeah, and everything was sculpted in ZBrush. So here also, when you rotate around, it creates interest. So I wanted to create more, like, okay, if it has been created in real life, how it will be. So I want to give viewer multiple views, so that if they turn around and see the sculpt, and they should be able to my sculpture should be able to hold them for a longer period. I believe any sculpt, it should hold the spectator for a very long time, rather than one glance you look at it, and people take away their eyes, then there is something ingredient missing. So I want my in my sculpture, people should the spectators should spend a little more time, involve themselves in the sculpt. So that is the whole idea of my sculpts. So I would like to show one more sculpt of mine called Shower of Summer Day. In this, I've tried double spiral composition. So this was the pose was inspired from Augustin Rodin. He is one of my favorite sculptor. I hope everyone seen this sculpt. So I was inspired with this sculpt, and the posture. So I used a similar kind of a thing, the pose. And as a sculptor, I wanted to capture the water, and everything is hand sculpted. The whole water is hand sculpted. Because I don't like to take shortcuts. I know it sounds crazy, but you can you can achieve this by FX also. But as a sculptor, I wanted to achieve water. I wanted to sculpt a water, and that was really this was a really fun project for me, and I learned a lot from this. And once again, in this I've tried double spiral composition. So if you see this, and it's a summer, and after her beach. She's having spending time in the beach. She's having shower bath. So that was the idea behind it. And if you see here, I've tried double twist. I've started twisting the hips, started twisting the leg, and creating more spiral composition. So if you see here, it's more of a spiraling, and it gives multiple viewpoint for the spectator. And sometimes it's very tough to render it out in a single image. Now technology is grown to the next level where you can tumble around, you can turn around the whole model, and you can look at it. So I'm really exploring in that, since it's not, I won't be able to justify this spiral composition, everything in one image. So sometimes I feel, I wish I could turn it around, or people can turn the whole model and see the sculpt. So now the technology is grown so much, so I use a lot of this technique. I never sculpt for one view. I always sculpt for multiple views and keeping in mind. So every area I give importance. And I studied a lot when sculpting water, how it drips on the body, how it moves, and spend a lot of time researching on this. And same line, I want to show, as a sculptor, I wanted to capture foam. It's a very sometimes it's very tough to capture a foam or a sculpt a foam. So this is a morning bath after a swim, taking a shower. So here I wanted to capture the foam actually, and as a sculptor, I have always find difficulty in traditional sculpt to sculpt air, water, foam, to get that feel in sculpting, not by rendering it, but I am trying to achieve through sculpt itself. By sculpt itself, you should able to make or feel the tactileness of it, and you should say, oh, this is a foam, or this is this material. So I explore a lot in those lines, and same time it's I give importance for anatomical study also, and this is not a spiral composition, it's kind of a direct thing, but I just wanted to show you guys how I've created foam, smaller foam, bigger foam, and this is all sculpted in ZBrush. So always try to play with light and shadow, or always try to see how it looks, how the light behaves on my sculpt, and how the anatomy works. And now I would like to show you multiple spiral composition. So this is a journey towards eternal harmony. In this, I've tried to capture like film posters. They in one image you should able to understand the whole movie. So I wanted to capture this in my sculpt. the beloved loved one is dead and the soul is traveling. And as I was telling, I always explore to sculpt, which is which I was not able to do it in traditional sculpt, where I was not able to sculpt a soul or a wind. And digital sculpt give me that, especially ZBrush gave me that freedom, or to push my skills. And I really enjoy the possibilities using ZBrush. So and there is a drama, there is a tension. Spiral composition gives more the tension, and as well as gives more uh, involvement with the spectators. So I tried here multiple spiral composition, and same time I wanted to give importance to storytelling also, and I wanted to capture a soul. I've never sculpted a soul, so wanted to sculpt a soul. And in this, I got to learn a lot in depth ZBrush. I pushed myself technically also to achieve this, and always I tried something new in every sculpt. I try to push myself to learn something new, or new technique, or new to bring new elements into my sculpture. And once again, this is as I was telling, it's a multiple spiral composition. So if you see the three multiple sculptures are twisted in multiple angle. So I was exploring this in my sculpt. So the female has its own twists and turns, and the male has a different twists and turns. And I've tried to use contrapposta pose in this, where about to move kind of a thing. So I use the classic elements a lot in my sculpt. I always look back to the great masters, and there's a lot to learn. They have done a lot. I wonder if they would have got ZBrush, what they would have done. It's always puts me to think. I think they would have created fabulous sculpts, jaw-dropping sculpts. So I always enjoy watching it. And I believe in a concept called reborn every day. Like what I do is every day I work in an office, and as a human tendency you grow ego thing that I know everything. So when I come back home, I see the great masters work, and current digital masters. When I see their work, and I feel like, oh, I don't know anything. So I go back to my this thing basic, and kill my ego every day. And every morning I'll be reborn every day as a fresh artist, or a new artist. So that helped me to learn a lot, and that's how I motivate myself that, hey, I don't know anything. It's I have to learn a lot. So that keeps me inspiring me to learn new things, and take away my thought of I know something. So when we have that thought process, then you cannot grow. So whether you need to decide whether you want to be a sculpture or a pavement stone. If we take a lot of chiseling, we'll be a sculpture, good sculpture, or else we'll be a pavement stone. If you are thinking that I know everything, then it doesn't work. So this is my philosophy actually. So I follow that, and been following it from past 15 to 20 years. Every day I come back, and every day I do the same process, and every morning I woke up as a fresh new artist. So that helps me to learn new things. And I started playing with subjects like illusion, art as illusion. So we study in fine arts college, like art as illusion and everything. So this is one more sculpt called intimacy. I wanted to capture that bonding and everything. And in this is also spiral composition, double spiral composition once again, and the whole idea was to create illusion of existing presence of water, but there is no water. So art as illusion. So wanted to capture that in my sculpture, and same time even though the male is very masculine and heavier, but still I wanted to get that light feel, and the female should she is lighter, but she should look heavier. So that was the idea behind it. So wanted to make sure that the levitation is there, as if he is swimming in the water. Same time I wanted to get the relation or the bonding between them. And as I mentioned, that illusion, lighter body and a heavier body. So this was the exploration. And it's a WIP sculpt. Majority of my sculpts are WIP. I never completed. For me, is bringing out the idea is important, because I want to explore that storytelling before I forget that. So I bring to a certain stage. After that, I lose interest. I'm working on it. It's a not a good sign, but I'm working on it. So this is so I play spiral composition a lot, because it helps in storytelling. It creates attention, it creates multiple view, and same time it makes the viewer more involved in your sculpt. And a good and well presented sculpt is success in reaching its spectator and remember long after over others, according to me, because the story which has a good story, which will very easily people will start relating to it. And it's like watching a movie. When you get involved to the movie, you enjoy more. So I use this in my sculpture also. I try to involve the spectator in my sculpt, so that they enjoy a lot. So this is the idea behind my storytelling and my compositions. So and I would like to show my process, how I work. And I believe in one more thing. I forgot to mention it. I aim to create a piece that provokes emotion, response from a personal standpoint, give the right subject and right sculpt on, and one can deliver a powerful message to the viewer or the art lover. And I use this language or this way of storytelling, so that I want to tell message to the society, or to the or express my stories through sculpting. According to me, we've learned we have learned from the great masters. Like when you see the sculptures, we have learned through the sculptures or the painting. They tell a story. Because of that, we have learned and we have gone to know about the culture, different mythology stories. So I have adopted those things in my sculpture, and I trying to adopt that and trying to tell story further. I would like to show you guys my sculpting workflow, and before I jump into my workflow, I would like to say how talk about how important is collecting references, because Sorry, let me open the file once again. I spend a lot of time collecting references, multiple references. I spend 1/3 of time downloading the references, or I spend the description and how it should be, or I'll be brainstorming the stories, like what is that I want to depict, what is that I need to show in this, what story, and I usually do a maquette, or do a collage of poses which I feel like, oh, this, it's very close to my thought process. I would have already visualized the final output, so I fill those reference materials for me, so that it helps me while sculpting rather than imagining it. So my approach is more of like a traditional sculpture. Like I start with Z-sphere, and for me it's like an armature. So I build an armature, and then uh, you know uh, then convert into adaptive skin. And once I create adaptive skin, I do Z-remeasure to so that I don't have too dense poly. Once that is done, what I do is uh, like a traditional clay approach. Mine is I take primitives, spear. So like in clay sculpting, you take clay lump, clay ball, and then start applying on the armature. My approach is similar to that, nothing different. I mimic as if I'm doing in my clay. So I I enjoy this process, and it's not that every time I do in the same process, but every time I play with different process. It's like sometime I start with mannequin. Let me show you guys a little later. So I start with the basic things, uh, you know. So right now it may look a little lengthier process, but trust me, it's one of the fun process, uh, which I recently found this is very handy and useful. And in this process, I won't be sculpting much. It's push pull, play with the forms. Uh, so so I keep on building in this fashion. Uh, so it's easy for me to get the shapes very quick, very fast. It helps in building the forms, shapes way faster. So So it's like I enjoy this process. It's like if you have done the clay work, so you'll realize how fun it is. Like it's more like adding the lump of clay and pushing, pulling. You're getting all the things done faster. Like applying layer. I enjoy every clay strokes like that. I really enjoy it, and I make sure that I uh, sculpt from all view. And so I like this over layer. I start building it, and uh, so once I get to this stage, I'll add multiple spears. And one more thing, I had taken legs for this. I have taken legs from brush. Brush. What is there in here? Parts. So you have multiple parts. I didn't want to spend time on this, so I directly picked from that, and as a starting point, so used that. And once I did that, I completed the whole body, and I had used the same hands from brush. So I created, and moved push, pull. Still, I give a lot of importance for, silhouettes. So it should be, before you sculpt also, you should be able to get that silhouettes. Even though, I have not done any major sculpt. If you see in the thing, I believe in this. For me, initial stage is, I have put an image for this. For me, is a silhouette rather than the forms inside. First, I give more importance to silhouette, then I give importance to the form inside. So once this is done, I sorry, I do remesh by union because it's a multiple thing, and color accept it, and it will be fused, so that it will be easy for me to do a dynamesh, because it will be fused, so it will be easier. So one more thing, when I do the dynamesh, I keep it for very less value, so that for me it will be easier for me to sculpt. So I'll use, in this stage I use, if you go for brushes, I use smooth, strong. The whole idea is to remove it and give me a nice base for me to start. So this kind of blocking, it's like I'm not sculpting much here, but the forms and everything. If I'm just started blending it, it started giving me a nice form, shape, and it will help me to create asymmetry also. It's easy to sculpt asymmetry from here on. So I would smooth it, the whole sculpt, in this way. So and start adding a little bit sculpt. So my favorite brush is more, and I use very simple tools. I use a lot of clay tubes, moom, damp standard, and nothing fancy. Very minimal brushes, and I try to achieve the result with minimal brushes itself. And while sculpting, I keep my intensity very low, so that I can sculpt. I'm just blending it out, building the relation between the bigger forms to the smaller forms, and I keep on doing this, establishing the anatomical forms, making sure that I get that anatomical forms and everything proper, anatomy proper. I spend little time here sculpting and establishing bigger forms, getting that right gesture, all those things. I spend here a little more time. It's like once you have a sculpt in clay, you start, detailing, right? Something like that. I do the similar approach. So dam standard also I use, very minimal intensity to get what I want. So it will be easy for me to I clean up the mesh, since I have kept it in a very low intensity. So I I always use this technique. So it really helps me to understand. And when you are sculpting in a dynamic pose, it's very important to have a basic understanding of anatomy, because you need to know how how muscle system work, and how a person, if person is sitting in this position, how it how the body anatomy will be, and how the gesture works. So that is important. So for that I collect a couple of references, or I look, I do a maquette, or as I mentioned, I do a quick draw to resolve or the puzzle if I'm blocked. See, with very minimal sculpt, I'm able to get more out of it, because I spend a little more time in my blocking. For me, blocking is very important. That is the stage which helps you to that's where you need to spend a little more time. Yes, I do sculpt in a different fashion for the, especially for this sculpt. I've done it in this fashion, but if you see this, I start with the mannequin and directly sculpt on it without the process what I showed you. I won't do that, but I sculpt in this way also. But recent I was exploring different way of blocking, so I really liked and the result what I'm getting in this process. So it's really quick, faster, and I won't spend much time getting sculpting this. It's already there underneath. Thing is there. I'm just connecting the forms, shapes, giving enhancing and giving relation between one form to other form anatomically. Playing with this. It started, looking a little believable, like the flesh started, reflecting. And once this is done, I, I clean up. It's like my approach is more like, watercolor kind of approach, where I build layer by layer. I don't go and establish a form and or then I won't be spending much time like that. I build it by layer. For me, the shades and values are important. I give more importance to the play of tonal values. So like an traditional sculpture, or if you are sculpting in a stone, you give more importance to those tonal values. And same time, I explore a lot, like traditional sculpture, like I have put across an image like MRI scan. I do isolate, and if you've done terracotta sculptures, you build a wall. I have done it. I do it in that way. I go. This is how I isolate and see the shape, whether anatomically it's right or wrong. Then I build my sculpt, like supposing like I isolate it like this. Uh, so I make sure that this is wrong, like so I go clean it up, like how we build it in terracotta. I bring a lot of my traditional skills, what I've learned over a period in traditional art. So I implement all those things, and once this process is done, I do a ZBrush. Sorry. Uh, yeah, and this is the final sculpt which I've done. Still WIP, still working on it. So once I do that, I do a quick ZD measure, so that I get a little better mesh, and then I'll jump into more in depth into anatomy, establishing the anatomy and forms. And I always I want to show one more image where I always treat in this manner actually. I don't know the author. I found it in online, this image, but it's a very informative low frequency form and high frequency form. See how and lost edge and transactional edge. So in my sculpt, I use a lot of this. I like the transactional shades created in the sculpt. So I sculpt in similar fashion. If you see my all the sculpts, I keep all these elements in my sculpture. You get it in online. This image is very useful, and I always implement this. I found it in very useful. I always treat it in the similar fashion. It's a very nice material actually. I really advise you guys download this and say this. It's beautifully put together, and even for very muscular and muscle, which is the soft edge, which is the hard edge, lost edge. So in this also there is a lot of things, because I usually see uh, uh, not commenting on anybody's sculpt, but I see people making it more depth, or muscle doesn't look more believable, even though it anatomically it may be right, but that flesh quality or that transactional values won't be there. So I like sculpt which has something this kind of a recipe in the sculpt. And to sometimes if you are sculpting in that way, I suggest you guys this process, convert it to a grayscale, or if you have a habit of blurring your eyes and seeing your image, you see the bigger forms, and the transaction values, what I was talking about, the gradientation, so you understand even more better while sculpting. So if you are able to add all these elements in your sculpt, then the sculpt looks more realistic, more believable. And once again, just a second. Yes. Yeah. And here also, I every now and then I play with rendering out the image, model, see whether the play of light is nice or not. So I render a couple of times, and yeah, I mistook one more thing. Like whenever I sculpt, uh, I sculpt according to the form. How the form goes. My strokes goes like that. When you are doing in traditional sculpt, you put the clay in those direction. So my way of sculpting is also more similar to that. So I sculpt in those direction, and merge it out. It's like clay, put clay, merge the clay. So I always mimic this, even irrespective of what process I've started with. But my end result will be something like this. I always play in this fashion actually. So I don't suggest you guys here to use, uh, uh, smooth strong brush, because it will take away the sculpt. It will blends out the sculpt too much. So for me is the gradientation. What you could see a lot of variation in gradation is happening. I like to have this in my sculpt, and it gives you a subtle muzzle feel, even though I have not added any pore detail or anything like that, but still it gives you a nice lively like feel to it. So, and for this cloth I've used Marvelous Designer, and have created using panel loop. So I have done, if you go to my ArtStation page, I have created a tutorial, and you can see that. Using panel looping. So then I use fiber mesh, and I don't want to go too much technically inside how I create the fiber mesh and all. There are pretty nice tutorial, and awesome artists have done better presentation. So I create this here, and give thickness to it, and treat like as a like a sculpture itself here also. So then still I'm working on it. I need to give more life to the leg, feet. Still a lot to fix, but I thought I will share with you guys. And yeah, that's it. Keep sculpting, guys. And thanks for having me and giving me this opportunity, and to share my way of working. And thank you, guys.
Okay, thanks everyone for such a great chat activity. I think we all need to catch our breaths here from a spectacular presentation from Vichar. Vichar, if you're okay with this, we've got I've been fielding a lot of questions here, and just to remind everyone, we weren't able to present that live, so Vichar recorded that for us before we began today. But Vichar is here, and anyone who's been chatting with everybody, and I've collected all of your questions. Vichar, if you're okay, can I throw some questions at you and field these for these guys?
Yeah. I'm more than happy to answer.
Okay, so I'm going to sort of work my way backwards, and I may want to go back to highlight a few of your pieces shown in the video, if that's okay. There were some questions on specific things that people wanted to know about.
Sure.
Okay, then sort of working backwards here, since you were spending a lot of time in your blocking out stage, there was a lot of people that were excited about that part of your presentation. A lot of people don't necessarily know how to start. One question was, do you advise, you presented using mannequins and or primitives. Do you advise starting with mannequins or blocking it using primitives?
It's a nice question, but at the same time, it's a tricky thing. It's like using the salt according to their taste, like whether you can add more salt or less salt. It's like that. So sorry for the weird example, but I prefer to start with the primitives, because it gives you a lot of understanding about shape, volume. So you have to work around to to get the exact shape and volume.
Yeah. Yeah, I see that as that is sort of a case by case scenario, right? Depending on, like, for example, in your presentation, you have the woman sort of sitting with her legs crossed. If
Yeah.
in that situation, it seems better maybe to use primitives. But if you're doing a full figure, say the guy taking a shower, he's standing upright. A mannequin is an easy way to get a full upright body in a quick sort of position.
Yeah, true. I play a lot with initial blocking stages. Like I try different methods because since I've been doing for myself, I explore a lot. So this is the recent one which I'm playing with this, or else I'll start with mannequin also. So
Yeah.
it depends what I want to get the end result.
Right. Yeah. No, that's very good information. That was a great question. We have another question coming from Rui, who is asking just generally, how do you maintain a consistent form especially when you're going in, you've got the figure sort of blocked out with primitives, but you want to start hitting you got the bony structures and then you got the flesh on top. How do you maintain the volume and shape while sculpting without symmetry?
I believe in a concept called mind drive, like a Google Drive. So you need to feel the tactileness. I always tell everyone that it's not necessary that you have to be a great sculptor, but at least feel the tactileness of the clay. Once you start doing it, you're storing the information in your head, like Google Drive, mind drive. So whenever you are sculpting, automatically your eye goes around that. So I usually train my eyes because of continuous practicing certain parts, or like example, I'll be practicing torso. I spend a lot of time with different turn, different motion and everything. So I have done a lot of exercise like this. So I have stored in my mind, right? So whenever I approach those areas, I implement those learnings.
I love that concept of Google Drive. That's great.
That's the reason I was telling about the MRI scan, like that. Like if because I use a lot of traditional approach, because in terracotta when you are building a wall, you have to train your eyes to see the symmetry. So there is no safety net in traditional art. Same way I treat it in ZBrush also. So I have to break out of that fear of whether it won't come right or not. So we need to break that, and we need to take a bolder step. That once it will be wrong, we learn from our mistakes. So I have learned over a period. I've tried my eyes to look in that way.
Yeah, that's a great philosophy and a great tip, and it comes through experience, right? And sort of pay attention.
Yes.
and keep learning and challenging yourself. And you've had a great deal of experience, as you discussed at the beginning. So this does come with time in some cases.
Yep.
Yeah, great question. And another one is actually coming from someone who maybe is just looking into ZBrush. She was asking, or he was asking, I'm not perfect in painting. Should I be able to start, and should I be able to learn ZBrush? So maybe someone who hasn't had much experience in sculpture before, maybe trying out with painting or drawing.
I think it's way easy to get hang on ZBrush, because even though I come from sculpting background, but I applied the art principles in this. The tools will always support. Only thing is you have to take it to a next level. So you need to master the tool initially. Then afterwards, you can explore, which is not possible in traditional art. Even I have done some of the painting feel in ZBrush also, using ZBrush.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. For anyone who is looking to learn ZBrush, you can head to Pixologic.com and you'll be able to find access to the trial page and give ZBrush a try yourself. And we've been doing these streams specifically to help facilitate anyone out there who's looking to get started in ZBrush. And you've been giving a great presentation on that. Another question coming from Pascal Blanche was, so do you sculpt with one particular angle in mind? A lot of your presentation a lot of it is spent on, you're very heavy on story, and that's very prevalent in all of your pieces. Are you always thinking about one particular angle when you begin that sculpt?
Yes, usually I first visualize a certain form or a shape. So I work around that, and I have something already sculpted in my mind, like as if I'm virtually seeing it. Then I'll make it real actually in ZBrush. So to do this, I collect a lot of references. So whenever I'm free, I always keep collecting different posture, gesture, or emotion. So whenever I'm thinking of a subject, I go back to those folders, and I stick with one pose which tells exact story.
Yeah, I love that philosophy, and that truly sets your work apart. Being able to tell a story is a very important part. It really makes it stand out.
Example, I was showing Michelangelo sculpture, or Bernini sculpture, David. That pose itself tells you the whole story, because sometimes without subtitle you will understand the whole movie. The sculpt should be something
Right.
like that, where you should be able to understand, and it should be a universal subject, or universal emotion, or universal pose. Like always, I'll think, okay, if I don't know this language or our story, how do I get connected, or how do I bring my spectator into my sculpture? So I always think about this. So for me, yes, it's a very important factor for me, for a certain pose or certain angle. So I stick with that, and over a sculpt, I may change a little bit here and there, but my whole approach, I'll be in one image or one pose.
Yeah.
I hope it answered.
I think so. Absolutely. It's great advice and a great question as well. This was one coming from Brian B and a few others, actually. A lot of people just generally would like to know. I imagine there's a lot of time that you spend thinking about the story. How much time do you usually spend working on some of these models, some of these pieces?
As I said, every day, like art for my soul's sake. So every day I spend in the night after my office, I spend nearly 4 hours or 5 hours in the late night. Hardly a week or so. Like if you say take that time frame.
Okay. Okay, that's very good to know. Time is of the essence for many of us, but also a great piece can take a little bit of extra time as well.
Yeah, but it's been a routine for me. I've been practicing from past 15 years in this industry. Like every day night, I sit till late, early morning. So for me, it's like every time I want to push something. So that time I spend 4 to 5 good quality hours for me, especially for me itself.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Do you, generally speaking, this is another question that came up, but just in terms of the process, going back to mannequins or primitives, do you prefer to stay in Dynamesh or ZBrush, or do you have sort of a preference, or is that a case-by-case scenario?
It's a good question. It's a case by case, and usually I was telling, like, I like to play with tonal values, because what happens is after a certain this thing Dynamesh, it's very tough to get the tonal value. So I jump to ZBrush. For me, topology is not important, but so that I can subdivide and start, laying out the layers, gradientation of sculpting, like layer by layer, I can build top of it.
Yeah.
It's particularly my this thing. You can go ahead with the both way, but I prefer to have a little ZBrush, because it will be lighter to handle, and it will be a little faster.
Yeah, the just on that topic, you can have it's sort of a different approach. Dynamesh is, I think, more comparable to, say, like a clay or something that has just one sort of volume or texture. But having that ZBrush surface with subdivisions at a low level, you can make global movements and adjustments to silhouette, and the surface is a bit more forgiving, right? So I find that to be a nice
True.
effect or advantage.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to go back to a couple of these pieces, if you're okay, to talk a little bit about it.
Yeah.
There was a lot of excitement about some specific things that you did with your pieces. So I'm going to pull up this particular one right here.
Yeah.
I got the sound down so we can just play it. What was your approach here for, we've spent a lot of time talking about the figure, the accessories. So she's wearing some nice lace. You said you discussed maybe using panel loops at one point for another one of your pieces?
Yes. That Smoking Beauty, yes, I used a lot of panel loops with masking, and extracted it. I gave a thickness to that, and used a micro mesh also. I had created a tileable netted kind of a thing, and started populating around the cloth.
Okay, so then Panelips offers you the ability to basically use a masking brush to essentially draw in the shape and create polygroups and Panelips from those surfaces.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a wonderful technique.
because you can control, you can play a lot. When we do a panel loop, it gives you different groups also, and we can handle it very nicely. Actually, it gives you a lot of freedom to play around.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of my favorite features.
Yeah.
Let's see. Let's go back here. I want to take this video out for a second, if it'll let me. There was another question on, let's see. A lot of people were wondering, I'm going to bring up an image here in a second. Actually, let's go back to just a general sort of workflow. This one is coming from one of our chat users. Your sculpts are so dynamic. Do you plan and sketch the pose before starting and composing that in ZBrush? So I'm assuming that means in 2D. Do you do any kind of two-dimensional sketching?
Initially, I used to do that. And right now, I visualize it 3D, or else I do a small maquette in the clay, just push pull and a small thumbnail kind of a thing, so that how I usually see how the play of light is looking and everything.
Yeah. It's great to kind of have an idea of where you're going before you start. Otherwise, you might spend extra time.
It's the same approach. Like when we are doing in traditional also life-size sculpture, we do a maquette. So it's a small thumbnail of what I'm going to do. It's like how we open a folder, you see a small thumbnail. It's something like that. It gives you a better understanding, and I can start collecting material, or I can think whether the play of light will be nice, or it holds attention or not. So sometimes it gives you that. And nowadays I do a quick ZBrush mock-up or sculpt to understand that.
Okay, that's a great tip as well. Everyone, I'm taking notes as well, just like everyone else. All right, so another hot topic in the chat was this particular piece. I'm going to go ahead and play this for you guys. The piece was incredible. The figures themselves there's just so much happening here, and it tells a great story, including, you talked a lot about sculpting the soul. Actually, this is the first time that you've sort of tried to sculpt the soul. What was your process here to actually create the artifacts of the soul sort of transitioning up?
Okay. So initially, I created a base mesh of that after the flow of the soul as a sculpt. Then I created multiple like an onion skin. I created multiple body traveling, and then I used panel loop for this same panel loop what I had initially explored, panel loop, and I used nano mesh and manually went and played with the size of the nano mesh with smoothing, inflating it, and blended with the soul thing also, the body.
Wow.
It's a blend of two process.
That's incredible. That's a really intelligent and great use of those two features, and it shows through so well. The transition here is wonderful. You have a lot of high praise and compliments for especially a lot of these additional things that just these extra layers give it so much.
Yeah, because no one had sculpted that. I always think about subject which traditionally no one has done, or digitally no one has done it. So it's challenging to get that, or get that feel of it. So I wanted to get that soul feel. Yes, we could achieve this in VFX, but as I said, I'm from a traditional background. I want to push my skills to achieve this in digital.
Yeah.
And one more thing is the clay which never dries. That's the best thing. Because in traditional it's very tough to achieve something like that if I want to do it in a clay.
Absolutely.
So
also wonderful advice, and I'm going to take this away for just a moment. Just generally speaking, when you're the kinds of brushes that you're using in your workflow, in your presentation, you were simply kind of just going in with standard clay buildup brush, using brushes with surface. Do you use the default brushes provided in ZBrush, or do you also make custom brushes? I know that you, for example, one of your pieces here on ZBC, this is using some other custom brushes. How often are you using these in your process?
Usually, I stick to very simple process, whatever it's there available in the ZBrush. And this is from the Pablo clay brush, where I got an opportunity to explore the clay look. And it's one of the awesome brushes which I've come across to mimic the clay feel.
Yeah.
To that question, I stay with the default thing, because I believe in keep it simple. With simple brushes, you can achieve a lot of great result. But we have to stick with the basic.
Sure. In our experience, in a lot of the presentations we've seen at the summit, a lot of amazing artists like yourself do use a lot of the basic brushes provided. So it doesn't require any specific brushes to get this kind of work. You can do this with a few brushes that are already provided in ZBrush.
Yeah.
The last piece that I want to go back to is, this was another hot topic. Whoops, let me make sure I get this right. This one in particular, you really outdid yourself, I think, on this one. The water effects are incredible. Could you talk a little bit about how you went about making the water streams?
Yeah, actually, I was trying a way to sculpt the water, and I was finding difficulty. How do I sculpt it? And I need to get that rhythm as well as the, as if it is flowing from the body. So I masked it out. Used a panel loop for this also, and certain area panel loop, and extracted a mesh from masking, and then I went on top of it and sculpted on top of it.
Okay.
To give that variation in the water. So in certain part I go closer, you could see that time I have sculpted every, what happens is the water, once it touches the surface, there will be blending to the skin, and certain area the water will be very thick. So I have tried to achieve that in sculpting by manually sculpting all the water blend.
Yeah, it's a wonderful piece. And did you happen to use any, for example, you can use the snake hook brush with, say, the Alt key to kind of go in and push that piece around?
No, actually I used manually move brush. Wow. And I didn't use snake hook because what happens is it goes away from the surface. So I wanted to stick with the surface itself, and it's a very subtle change what happens in the water when it is flowing on the body. So wanted to get that smallest, slightest change. It's about enjoying the process, actually. Yeah, it's not about completing it. It for me was more of trying to achieve that. I was very thrilled and fascinated to sculpting a water, because as a traditional sculptor, it's very tough to sculpt in water. So majority of this, my majority of the series, I worked on water. So I try to master that. How do I sculpt a water?
Yeah, it's a remarkable piece, truly remarkable, and you've done such an incredible job of capturing that, and you would so much high praise through all of your pieces throughout all of this presentation. So I want to thank you. That covers all the questions that we had throughout the stream.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
And you can show up that last this thing also. Like right now, I'm trying out for the 3D printing stuff, kind of a thing.
Yes, we have this piece here.
Yeah. So exploring, telling history, sculpting.
This is a mind-blowing piece. I'm just trying to catch up here and take a moment to stare at it. It's incredible. This is all the process here. Can we talk a little bit about the horses, for example? Do you do the same thing in terms of blocking out the body with primitives and things like that?
For this one, I use dynamics directly, because for me, I wanted to get the bigger forms and then establish. So it was something like that process with dynamics.
This is incredible. So and this is a piece that you're actually going to be 3D printing, you said?
Yes.
Wow. And can you talk a little bit about what kind of print you'd like to do, or what is the plan for this piece?
I'm with a close friend of mine we are trying out with a 3D print. So I'm done for him, like for a 3D print. So I want to explore more on 3D print, because I've never got an opportunity to explore or tactileness of my sculpture. Like usually as a sculptor, I usually feel it, but I wanted to see how it looks.
Yeah.
And same time it's a spiral composition once again here, and I wanted to sculpt history and try out 3D printing it out.
That's amazing. I imagine that's going to be quite an experience for you, coming from traditional sculpture and the metal work and all the work that you've done before transitioning to digital, now doing it digitally and pushing this out with a 3D print. That's awesome.
That's seriously, it's. I think I really enjoy, as I said, the clay which never dries. I'm in love with it. And so many years gone, the paint to retain the clay, and
Sure.
You have to take care like a small baby, so it's very painful.
Yes, no, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, these new experiences are I think what pushes it and pushes you and all of us. And we love and appreciate that your philosophy and your dedication to all of this. I can't tell you how, I don't know how much you were paying attention to the chat, but you have a lot of high praise for all of this work. So it's truly incredible. And we thank you so much for taking the time to present for us and helping everyone through this time of quarantine and all of that.
I would like to take this opportunity to thank Pixology, and special thanks to Solomon for you for hosting me. And I really enjoyed. And this was the first time streaming something like that. I was quite nervous, so I hope people liked it, and keep sculpting, guys. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. It was truly my pleasure, my friend. And on behalf of Pixologic, we thank you so much. And yes, no, it was a beautiful presentation, and this will be up on YouTube forever. You guys will be able to watch this over and over again. I know I'm probably going to watch it a few times at least. And again, make sure, I'm going to throw this in the chat here. Everyone, you can follow Vichar here on ZBrush Central. This is his gallery. I've been using this on screen to kind of scrub through. He has an incredible series of works here that are just amazing and inspiring. So again, Vichar, thank you so much. And we will see all of you guys next time in the next ZBrush Masters stream.
Thank you.
Thank you. Everyone,
Bye.
be safe.